We're going to cover installing PTO Rising Sun Beta onto Windows 7 64-bit operating system. There's a few things we need to do along this to ensure the game works properly, so we'll cover that now. The first thing we need to do is we need to go to the main game folder for CFS3. So I'll browse to that, and that's in the x86. Microsoft Games, and you need to copy your main game folder from the x86 and you need to paste it into the regular program files. I'll show you that here. So we go into Program Files, Microsoft Games, and you see I've done that already. I have like a virgin copy of Combat Flight Simulator 3 main game folder already pasted in here into Microsoft Games. We absolutely have to do that before we start the install. And step one, it's going to look for the files, and it's going to look for them in the program files, not in the x86 program files. So that's why we need to do that. So I can start the install. I have the 7 zips here that we need to run. So I'm going to start zip 1 first. And I'll just double click and select run. And this will just take a minute. Okay, so we have our first prompt. I'll click next there. This is just a warning not to run the game from any of the shortcuts on the desktop until we've completed the install. It's important that you do not do that or it'll mess things up. So I'll click next. I'm going to leave the default path as is. I'm not going to change it over the x86. I just find it works better for me. I've tested doing it this way and it runs fine, and I'm also to fly online multiplayer. So I'm going to just leave it as default. So we'll click next and start. And press any key. And press any key. So that part of the install is complete. I'll click exit. And we'll click next. Next. And we'll leave the path as is. And start. So this is going to take a minute. I'll touch base when it's complete. Okay, so step 1's completed installing, and I'll just click exit. And we'll go back to where I have these stored, and we'll do part 2. So at this point here, all the installs are pretty much the same thing. You have a couple of next prompts. You leave the path as default, and then you just click start to continue. I'm going to go ahead and do all 7 parts of the install, and I'll just stop at the end of number 7, and we'll touch base then. Okay, so 7 of 7 is completed. You can see that up at the top here, and I'll click exit now. And it's asking if we want to run the multi-CFS3, and we do. And we'll just back this out and type back in CFS3 space PTO, all uppercase, space Rising Sun. And I'll just check for typos here. CFS3, yeah, looks good. Click accept. And it's wanting us to run the BDP zapper, so I'll do that. Press any key. And the ZX zapper, and I'll click yes to that. And we can close this out now and go back to desktop. Okay, so we completed all the 7 extractions and installs. You can see now that we have the shortcuts for the game on the desktop. It's important that we do not run the game from here first. We need to do some modifications, so we'll take a look at that now. So do a properties, open file location. And this takes us into the main game folder, so I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to run the CFS3 config. Just have it check my video card. That came in fine, so we'll exit. And now we can run the game for the first time from the CFS3 icon in the main game folder, not the one on the desktop. So I'll do that now. Alright, so the game fired up okay from within the main game folder, and now before we can run it from the start, we need to make a couple of changes in a batch file and some permissions here, so we'll do that now. We'll click on Properties, Open File Location, and I'm just going to click up here where it says Microsoft Games, and that takes us back so that we have the CFS3 PTO Rising Sun folder, and we just need to modify some permissions on that. So we'll go to Properties and up to Security, and we'll click on Edit, and we'll see users, Win7 users, and as you can see they do not have full access, so we'll give that to them by clicking on the top one, and then that basically fills in the rest. We'll click Apply. And we're done. So we'll close all this out. Okay, so we made the changes to the security settings there. Now we can go ahead and change the theater batch file, and I'll just show you where to do that. So do a Properties, Open File Location, and you can see that the Rising Sun theater selector is highlighted, and we'll just do a Properties on that. Just make sure that the read only is unchecked, which it is. And now we can go to Edit, and we'll just scroll down a little bit here, and you're going to see the statement, this C, Documents and Settings Administrator. When this was originally set up, it was set up on a Windows XP machine with a administrator account. Seeing that we're running Windows 7 operating system, this path here is completely different, so I'll show you how to get the new path and how to change this. So the first thing we're going to do is go to Computer, C Drive, Users, and you just need to go in here into Folder and Search Options, and under View you need to make sure that Show Hidden Files and Folders and Drives is checked, and in my case it is. And so I'm just going to go in. My username here is Jim. Your username would be whatever it is that you log onto your computer with. So in my case I'm going to go into here. Now this App Data folder is available, and we'll go into Roaming and down to Microsoft, and we'll just double click on PTO Rising Sun, and if we click on the folder up here we see that we have a path, and this is the path that we now need to copy in and replace with the one that's in the theater selector. So we'll just do a copy here, and now I can go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to go from the end here and highlight this. You need to make sure that you leave both sets of brackets in, so I'll just hit backspace and then Control V as in Victor. And so I'll do, there's 7 of these to do. So I'll just do that now. And you just need to be careful that you do not get rid of the brackets. Sorry, just bear with me here, it takes a minute. Just a couple more to do. Okay, so that's done. I'm just going to scroll up and make sure that we haven't removed any of the brackets here, and everything looks good. And now I'm going to go ahead and save this. If we did not make that change on the security permissions, it wouldn't allow us to save here. We wouldn't have rights to do that, but seeing that we did, we're okay to save that. And I'm just going to close this. Alright, so there's just one last thing we have to do now before we can run the game. And this is the usil installer, and that's part 8. And I'll run that now. And we'll just click next through that, and you see that we have this path. It's the same path that we got rid of in the theater selector batch file, so we need to modify that as well in here. So we'll just back this all out. And I'll just hit Control V again, And we're pasting in that same statement we did in the batch selector file that you see here. And in this case, you want to make sure you do not have the brackets here. It's just a standard path that it's going to use. And we'll click next and start. And it says it's been run successfully, so we can exit. Okay, so we can run the game for the first time from the start icon on the desktop. I'm going to do that now, so I'll just double click on it. And you see we're going to be presented with the 7 theaters in PTO. This is a brand new install of ETO, so it's important that we run Theater 1 first. So I'm going to do that to see how it works. Alright, so that seemed to work okay. I'm going to now fire up Theater 2, and we'll just see how that works. Okay, so it looks like Theater 2 fired up okay. I'm just going to run through the remaining theaters and make sure everything works properly. You'll notice that each theater has its own set of splash screens, so let's just cycle through them and make sure they load okay. There's just one last thing that I want to just point out that I did not do in the install. It's the static aircraft mole fix, and basically what that does is just fix a little error with some of the airplanes look like they're kind of half out of the ground in some of the airfields. You can choose to do that if you want. It's not critical. There's instructions in zip 1 here. You'll see it, the static mole fix. So if you follow the instructions there, I'm sure you can sort it out. Anyway, that pretty much covers installing PTO Rising Sun on Windows 7 64-bit and 32-bit operating systems. And I hope it works out for you. Thanks.